let's make another major scale, maybe a more difficult one this time. And let's start on the note D. Now, I could start on any D on the piano keyboard, but just for convenience, I'm going to start on the D that is right above middle C. So I'm going to start by filling in my note head right on that D space below the treble clef. And I know that I'm going to end on the D one octave above, so I'm going to fill in my note head on the D on that fourth line. And I know that I'm going to use one of each letter name in my D major scale. So I'm going to have one D, one E, one F, one G, one A, one B, one C, and then I'm going to come back to D at the end. So I'm now going to fill in a note head on each one of the lines and spaces for each one of those letters. So I filled in my D line, my D space. Now I'm going to fill in a note head on my E line, then on my F space, then on my G line, then on my A space, and my B line, and then on my C space, and then finally on the D. Now again, I don't know what accidentals may or may not be on each of these letters. We may have sharps, flats, double flats, who knows? But this is the general shape of the scale. So now let's see, what is our pattern of half steps and whole steps? And before I do that, let me actually play what I've written here, just so we can see what our ear is telling us. So that's a pretty interesting sound, but that doesn't sound really much like a major scale. So we can probably expect that our pattern of half steps and whole steps is going to be pretty far from what we have in our whole half model. So let's see. From D to E, we have a whole step. From E to F, we have a half step. From F to G, we have a whole step. From G to A, we have a whole step. From A to B, we have a whole step. From B to C, we have a half step. I don't know why I put a C there. From B to C, we have a half step. And from C to D, we have a whole step. Okay, so this is pretty different. All right, between 1 and 2, we have whole steps that line up. Between 4 and 5, we have whole steps. 5 and 6, whole steps. And then everything else is wrong. Everything else. Between 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 6 and 7, and 7 and 8. So let's take one at a time. All right. So between E and F, we should have a whole step, but we have a half step. So how are we going to change this interval? We need to bring this E and this F, we need to pull these two notes one half step further apart. And we can either do that by lowering the E or raising the F. Let's see what happens when we lower the E. And let me just, so I'm going to make that E into an E flat. I'm going to bring it one half step further away from the F. And let me just play this and see, have we gotten further away or closer to a major scale? That sounds a little bit further away. And notice what we've done. We've actually created an additional problem here because we've changed this whole step that we had between D and E into a half step from D to E flat. So we've actually created a problem. So this is probably not the way that we want to go. What's our other option? Well, we can bring these two notes further apart by raising the F, or bringing the F one half step further away. So we'll make this F into an F sharp, like this. And again, let's just play this and check it and see what our ear tells us. Hey, that's actually starting to sound a little bit closer to a major scale. And look at what we've done. We've actually solved two problems here. Not only did we make this E to the F sharp from a half step into a whole step, change that here. But look at this. We had a whole step from F to G, and we needed a half step. And guess what? Making that F into an F sharp, not only brought it one half step further away from the E, it brought it one half step closer to the G. So we just solved two problems with one accidental. So that is now a half step, just as it should be. All right, so let's go over to the second one over here. Between B and C, we want a whole step, but we've got a half step. B to C. Okay. So again, we have two choices. We can bring this B down a half step, or we can bring this C up a half step. What happens if we bring this B down a half step to a B flat? Let's listen to it. Okay, just our ear is telling us that that might be a little bit further away from a major scale, and look what we did. We just created an additional problem. Between A and B, we had a whole step, which is exactly what we needed, but now, making that B into a B flat, we've created a half step where we don't want one. So that is not going to be the solution. Let's try the other way. Let's make this C one half step further away from the B. So let's make the C into a C sharp. So we've pulled those two notes, the B and the C, apart by one half step by making the C into a C sharp. Okay, so now we have B to C sharp. That's a whole step, which we want. And guess what? We solved our other problem as well. We made what was a whole step from C to D, which we didn't want, into a half step from C sharp to D, which is what we do want. And look at that. We've changed our pattern of half steps and whole steps, so now we have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And let me just play that so our ear can confirm that that is the case. There it is, a major scale starting on D.